Coming up on Rain in Threes.
It's Joe Reiniger!
Yes, sir!
For the first time ever, 3 generations of Kins 5 sports square off.
So let's go there.
Yep.
Are we building one in San Antonio?
Well, of course. I say that because I worry about Wemby.
Yeah.
I really do. Look, this guy wants to win.
Welcome to Rain in Threes.
Episode 1.
Season 1.
Episode 1, Season 1. History. Dude, you and I only get a certain amount of time in a newscast to mess around, have a little bit of fun.
Be ourselves.
We're in the back line of the show.
This was good.
And they finally said, you know what? Take all that energy, bottle it up, and we'll throw you in an unused office of the Kens 5 studios and make it into a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, podcasts are all the rave. I mean, it's all the thing. It's, what people are doing. So we said, hey, this would be fun. We've had so many conversations, so many antics and things going on. We go, this would be great for a podcast. This would be great for a podcast. So glad we're doing this. Welcome in. Now, the name, raining, meteorology, threes. You hit 3-pointers.
That's right.
But there's also another element to that. It's not just going to be the two of us.
We're talking about bringing in people from around town, right? Local city leaders, athletes, coaches, entertainment industry. If you talk about musicians, artists, people who are coming into San Antonio and represent the best of what our city has to offer.
I'm still waiting to hear how this first guest fits on any one of those, and I haven't heard it yet, because you actually ran into this first guest at was it a career day?
It was it was a professional networking event around town, career day at, with 3rd and 4th graders.
At Hofbrau Elementary.
Yep, for me, yeah. But usually we go to these career days a lot, and you get, a lot of different folks coming in.
No, they're fun.
And I see this guy in the corner, and he looks a little different than I'd usually known him.
But you knew him, right?
Oh, for sure, absolutely. Yeah. But he's rocking the powerful. He's got the chin music going on. He's got the
goatee.
I thought it was the chief of police. I'm like, dude, this guy.
Really.
And then I get a closer look at him, and it's just he's a guy who's probably got even the same amount of authority as the chief of police.
Oh, absolutely.
Around this parts.
Around this parts and in this building, ladies and gentlemen, our first guest.
It's Joe Reiniger! Yes,
There he is!
What's up, man? I gotta tell you guys are so sweet together. It's incredible. Really, you guys.
That's why we sit over here together.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
On the little love seat there. That's nice. Yeah.
Well, you had a latte. It's fine.
That's okay.
It's fine.
All right. It's good. Man, this is great. Thank you for having me.
So glad you're our first guest.
Really appreciate it.
This
is great. I'm doing great. Life is good, man. I no complaints. Doing the radio thing and traveling a little bit and just living life. Life's good.
Traveling a lot of bit.
Quite a
back
bit,
from the Super Bowl.
Back from the Super Bowl, up in New Orleans for a week, which is just nuts on its face, right? New Orleans, Super Bowl, it's crazy. But a lot of fun. Talked to a lot of cool people and. So, yeah, it's good.
Radio Row, too, because you guys are out there. That whole week is
whole week, yeah. We do our show out there the whole week, and, guests coming by all the time. Ex-athletes, celebrities, and just they're all pitching something, right? So that's how you get them. So they're all selling something. But, you sit down, you can have a nice conversation with them. So it's good. It's fun.
And it's full circle for you because, you were radio. Then you came to Kens 5 2 months after I did back in 96.
Dude, I will never forget it. And I wish I could remember the name. Terrible with it. But I got a phone call one day at KTSA because that's where I was. And said, we're looking for a morning sports guy. Would you be interested? I'm like, sure. Why not?
Yeah.
Auditioned here 3 times over a period of about 6 months. And I'm like, okay. And finally,
it was a 6-month process. Wow.
It was a long process. And I would come in, they set me up in the studio and, doing some stuff. I'd never done that stuff before. I had no clue what I was doing. But you sit there and read from a teleprompter. That was interesting, too, because I had never done that before. But, they finally offered me the job. And I started in mornings with Jim Thomas and Don Hammond,
Cindy Cassiano back in the days. Yeah. But here's what's cool is that I'm literally sitting in between 2/3 of Kens 5 sports. And this year, 2025, is 75 years of Kens 5. And 2 of the 3 sports guys are right here.
How nuts is that?
Yeah. Figure that
over 75 years, there's only been
You've only had 3 main sports guys.
I'm a very small part of it, and I'm big into
and your wedge is
I'm this is year 3 for me here in San Antonio, but looking back, I see all your old tapes from like the 90s, and you're going back to yourself, Dan Cook, and it's tough to go around town recognizing the void that you're filling in terms of sports coverage in this town. So, first of all, thank you for everything that you've done for sports in San Antonio. But also, man, just the stories where your predecessor. I mean, the stories I heard about Dan Cook. This dude was like a Brock Meyer kind of.
My God.
Like, this guy fired from the hip, Dan Cook.
Oh yeah. Anytime. And
there are stories that I've heard that we probably can't say on.
There's no way.
There's no way.
No, you can't say.
Right.
There were a lot of them. But
You worked with it.
I worked with him for 5 years, going on 5 years before he retired. And Dan, I'd learn something from him every day. And just that, first of all, he didn't care what you thought, but you watched him because he was funny as hell. And, you never knew what he was going to say. Him and Chris Maru were just like, these guys were off the rails.
When we learn of like talent coaching, they give us levels, right? Like when you're first on the air, first year or two, they're looking at your appearance, and you move to level 2, they're really listening, being viewers. Those guys were level 5 to 6.
Yeah.
They could say anything, do anything back in the era that, there weren't any cancellations. You know what I'm saying? And you're talking about a man.
They were above cancellations.
They were above.
They were above it.
Uncancelable.
Uncancelable.
I would hear stories where Dan Cook would say stuff on the air, and he would do a show, and then like viewers would call into him, and Cook would on the phone with viewers in the newsroom. They're like, "Oh yeah, why don't you come down here and tell me face to face?"
Yeah,
and Cook would literally then go stand outside the station, like roll up his sleeves, like waiting for people to like come fight him because they didn't like what he was.
That's absolutely true, and it used to drive the news director nuts. It scared the hell out of him. Nick Simonette was the news director when I worked here, first started and working with Dan, and Simonette would be like, "He's really going outside. He's really going outside. What are we gonna do? Should we call the police?" He was like, he was freaking out, and he would, and nobody would ever show up.
No,
right? So Cook would be out there waiting. Nobody would ever show up. But it was just,
and he was in his 70s.
Yeah,
that's the other part is that he was as tough as nails.
But the most generous man I think I've ever met. This guy would give you the shirt off his back, literally. And he would help people out all the time. He was
very
fantastic.
humble. He would walk into the studio. "How you doing, Luke? Hey, John, good to see you." He knew every camera person's name, but yet he interviewed Babe Ruth. He knew every camera person's name, yet he coined the phrase, "The opera ain't over till the fat lady sings." And I remember in the bathroom here, Ken's, I asked him, I said, "Dan, tell me the story. How did that happen?" And he said, "Well, it was Spurs Bullets. Remember when the Bullets, Washington team, not the Wizards." And he said they were, I forget who won, but came back from a 2 or 3-0 lead. And he said, "That just goes to show you that the opera ain't over till the fat lady sings." And he said the Washington Bullets head coach quoted him in D.C. And he said, "Like my friend Dan Cook says, the opera is not over till the fat lady sings." He says, "I called that SOB and I said, listen, if you're going to quote me, I didn't say is not. I said ain't. You need to get it right. The opera ain't over." And so it was said in D.C., then New York, Philly, and it became the phrase.
And this is before social media, too.
Yes. Good point.
Honestly, because now with us in sports nowadays, like news breaks, news drops, it's going straight on social media.
Absolutely.
For you guys, before social media, just how different sort of.
Oh, it was crazy. You really relied on sources a lot more back then. Right? Yeah. So you develop relationships with sources. And people that would give you that news and say, "Hey, I'm anonymous. I can't, don't sell me out." But so it was more like that back in those days, and that's what you had to do. Now there's information gets out all over the place, right? And it's boom, almost immediate. But and I know you, Nate, you've got sources. You talk to people, and I know that you do. We still do that in the business, but back then that's all you had. It really is. And Dan had everybody. This guy, everybody loved Dan Cook. He was like the king of San Antonio. He really was. And all over the place, the king of Las Vegas. I will never forget this. I'm in Las Vegas one time, and this was obviously before Uber, so you had to take cabs. There were taxi cabs everywhere. So I get into this cab, and they had a TV in the back seat, or monitor, advertising. And I'm sitting there, and we're going to wherever we're going, and all I hear Dan Cook's voice. yes, if you're in Vegas, come to the Las Vegas Hilton. I'm like, what the? It's Dan Cook. I'm looking at him on this thing. So he was doing an advertisement for the Las Vegas Hilton. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Back in the day, we used to do these sweeping wide shots, right? And they'd go to break, and they would talk to each other. And 9 times out of 10, they'd kill the mics, and you would just see the anchors chit-chatting, but you wouldn't hear anything. One night, they left the mics open by accident. And it was gold.
Yes.
And it was Dan, it was Albert Flores, it was Chris Maru, and they said, keep doing that. Leave the mics open. So now they know the mics are open. Now they're having fun with it, right? And so they're going to break one night, and the last tease before the break was a story about the Statue of Liberty. And I'll never forget, they go to the and I'm sitting home watching. I'm here like a year or two. I'm learning Ken's, right? And I'm watching, and they go to that sweeping wide shot, and the Statue of Liberty gets a face over. We'll be right back. And Dan leans over to Chris. He goes, hey, Chris, you know what else the French gave us? And Chris goes, what, Dan? Syphilis.
This is on the air.
On the air.
I mean,
On camera.
was this like smoking cigarettes on the air? Like you got the plaid jackets and that sort of
Pretty
thing?
much.
Plaid jackets,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I don't recall cigarettes on the air, but I know Dan always had a little something in his desk drawer. He had a little liquid courage.
A little bit of the Holy Spirit, the vibes, right there. Yeah.
Hey, one of those relationships you guys forged was with the San Antonio Spurs.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And I mean the biggest franchise for the city, the most attention sports gets, of course, is the Spurs. What's the state of the Spurs? We were just talking about this. You and I, we were able to cover and be a part of all 5 championships. Nate hasn't seen a winning season.
I know.
Back-to-back 22-win seasons.
That's incredible to me.
Growing up with the team. But, I mean, Joe, for you, most sportscasters are lucky to see one championship from the team that they cover in their lifetime, in their career, right? But your time at Ken's literally encapsulated all 5 championships for this. You saw it from the start, from the pinnacle, all the way up to the most recent.
I saw it all. I even saw the loss, right, in Miami. When,
Ray Allen.
Yeah, Ray Allen hits that shot. We were getting ready to go live on the air to celebrate.
Talking about a Spurs win.
Talking about a Spurs win.
it was-
and then
it
he
was
hits
that
that
close.
shot, and I'm looking out. I'm in a tunnel, and I look out, and the place is going nuts because this was in Miami. And, that's when – and you talk about just – I mean – yeah, you're hyped up, you're ready to go, and then all of a sudden, bam. But I tell you what, you're right. I thank the Spurs every day for just allowing me to ride their coattails for all of that action. And 1999 probably was will always be special because I'm young in the business. I've only been at Ken's for 2 years, and I'm in Madison Square Garden. And it's like, wow, this is nuts. I mean, it's crazy. And that year was fun anyway because it was a shortened season. They had the strike, and they only played like 50 games. And I loved it because every game meant something. I mean, you couldn't take a night off. I mean, 50 games, you're short season, you had to go.
Yeah.
And to watch that and to see that happen and play out was just so much fun. But all of them have their own stories, and it's just so much fun.
I'll never. Joe asked me in 2003, we're going to play the Nets in the finals.
New Jersey Nets.
New Jersey Nets. And so Joe says, you're from New Jersey. Why don't you come with us? I'm like, I can't go. What are we talking about? Maru was going. We had all the producers going, camera people going. I mean, we had a crew of like
Bridget
8 to 10
Smith
people.
went,
Bridget
yeah.
Smith. He's like, you should do the weather. We're going to be doing news and sports. You're from Jersey. You could do stories about New Jersey. And I said, let's try it. It was Nick Simonet.
Yeah,
I'll never forget.
yeah.
And we walked in his office. He goes, I love it. Go.
Yeah.
And so I got to go because that was back when the NBA Finals were 2-3-2.
That's
so
right.
3 games were up in
Yep.
New Jersey. And we stayed in New York City and Times Square and taking it all in. And that was such an experience for me, man. I mean, seeing it from that side. And we did the newscast from the roof of CBS.
The network.
The network
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
And, there I am doing the weather for San Antonio from New York City. Tomorrow's going to be partly cloudy. Are you sure?
It's like snowing. It's snowing in the background. You guys are good.
You're fine.
Yeah, whatever. We're having a good time here. Dan Rather, remember him?
Rather.
He'd walk out of the studio, and
He's
there
like
was
one of the most legendary.
a limo.
podcasts.
They're waiting for him to take him home. I'm assuming, but
You know what? You guys get on a rickshaw.
exactly. we're calling that cabbie again, or walking, one of the two. But what was so much fun about that, Nate, was the fact that we're up there on this roof, and Bill and I, we see a pool on some buildings down, and he says, I can hit that with a 5-iron.
Yeah, we're big golfers. We love golf.
And I said, there's no way. Dude, there's no way. And I guess Maru heard us, or we were telling Maru, and
Yeah, so I'm like, he's like, that'd be a drive. That'd be your best drive ever. That's like 350. I'm like, no, bro, that's a 5-iron from here. And Chris Maru said, isn't your father coming up here tomorrow? I said, yeah, because I grew up in New Jersey. My father was going to come watch. He goes, tell him to bring some clubs and some golf balls so you guys can try it. Like, Maru, have you been drinking? This is New York City. There's no way we could do something like that.
you're going to kill somebody, right?
And I'll never forget, when we were talking about this, there were 2 CBS engineers, like, within earshot. They just walked off. Plausible deniability. Yeah, I didn't hear a thing.
If the authorities come, we weren't here.
Right, But we ended up going to the NBA store. No, we didn't do it. We didn't do it.
No.
We went to the NBA store and bought little basketballs, and there was a chimney. we had about 30 of these balls, and we're shooting. I got 8 out of 10 on that one. You go. Yeah.
Like,
so somebody woke up with
bills down or something.
Yeah, somebody woke up with a bunch of little NBA balls in it.
But Joe, because you've been, think about it, you probably traveled all over the country following the Spurs.
Oh, all over the place. I mean, I've been to every Western Conference city and most of the Eastern Conference cities.
Good evening from the Delta Center here in Salt Lake City.
In fact, I'm so confident that the Spurs will not lose this series. I'll probably let Bill Taylor and Chris Maru shave my head if the Suns came back to win this series.
After that 99 championship, back in those days, we'd have a lot of European players in the NBA back then. So they had their own leagues. And the NBA champion, it was just, you did it. You went over and played the European champions, and it was like a little tournament. Well, the Spurs went to Italy. That's where it was, and so I got to follow them to Italy.
Wow. Buongiorno, guys, huh? Not bad for a South Texas guy making his first trip to Italy. Here we are in beautiful downtown Milan. I got to tell you guys, it is absolutely gorgeous here.
It was incredible, and the weirdest thing about that was it'd be like 11 o'clock at night, and I'm doing the 5 o'clock news back here. Yeah, so it was really weird, right? So we do live hits, and I had to FedEx stories back. To here, and it was just. It was
you guys were able to go live. You were live.
We would go live one time because it was the time difference. But I'll never forget it. It's dark. It's late in Italy, and it's 5 o'clock in San Antonio, and so I'm doing a live hit. But we were able to do that, and then again just send stuff back. But you talk about an experience. It was incredible. I never go to Italy or Europe,
Back here in the U.S., what was your favorite arena? Like, what's the arena you walk in and just go, man?
Well, obviously Madison Square Garden. That just iconic. But I'll tell you, the loudest arena I think I was ever in was Key Arena in Seattle.
Wow. Really?
I'm not kidding. And the Sonics back then were tough.
And just 90s, like
early 2000s as well. But that probably was the most rabid fan base that they loved the Sonics. I mean, they were devastated when they left, and I hope they end up, and I think everybody thinks eventually they'll get an NBA franchise.
All right, speaking of arenas, let's go there.
Yep.
Are we building one in San Antonio?
Well, of course.
What's going to happen? Yeah?
Well, you better. I mean, right? Look, and I know everybody said, Frost Bank Center, what it's called now, it's a great place, and it's been a great place. But think about that. That thing was built, in 2003?
Yeah.
I mean, it's old.
Wow.
And the contract runs out, I think, 2032. So
with the Spurs and
right. So you better get started. The issue is, and Nate, I know you know this, but the issue with the county and the county judge is, we don't want this thing to turn into the Astrodome. So we need to have what's this facility going to be?
Viable tenant or somebody.
Sure, and then it's, who's going to pay for it, and what are the taxpayers going to be on the hook for, and yada, 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 same old fight. But I think it will happen because, look, Tim Duncan was Tim Duncan. You guys, I don't know if you remember this, Nate. You're a young dude. Bill and I are old. Tim Duncan almost left San Antonio.
Yeah.
I mean, he came really close to leaving San Antonio for Orlando.
Yeah, 03 or something, right?
Doc Rivers was the head coach of the Orlando Magic back then, and the mistake he made was telling Tim's wife at that time she couldn't fly with the team. And she hated Orlando anyway and liked San Antonio. So that's when Tim decided, I'm staying in San Antonio. But he was close. He was really close to leaving. So I say that because I worry about Wemby.
Yeah.
I really do. Look, this guy wants to win.
Yeah.
And so the Spurs need to put together a championship team and a quality team to get this guy to stay.
Yeah, I remember you kind of leaning into the fact that it's really going to be up to the Spurs being a little more transparent with this whole thing. I mean, what do you suggest would be their best PR move in the city?
Let people know exactly what they need. How much are they going to be in out of their own pockets? How much are they going to need from the city? If I was the Spurs, I would hire a PR team for this thing, and I would go everywhere. And I'd tell people, this is what we're doing. This is what we want to do. I mean, downtown's going to be this great place with restaurants and bars and everything. And it's just going to be a fun place to go before the game and after the game. You know, it's going to be an experience if you go to a game. So that's what I would do.
The Spurs PR team is great when the organization lets them, kind of takes them on, lets them run off the leash a little bit. I look at 2 years ago when I first got here. The Spurs were the worst. They had the least talent of any roster in the NBA. They were
so
this
young.
was pre-Wemby. This allowed them to get Wembanyama.
Right.
It was 2 years ago, and they had 68,000 people. And this wasn't at the beginning of the season. The Spurs are already at the bottom of the standings. They had 68,000 people in the Alamo Dome for a game in which they lost by 40. They were always going to lose it by 40, but they broke an NBA attendance record that had been standing since the mid '90s. I think, too, especially with the growth of the city, people moving here, we're about to overtake Philadelphia, I think it is, in terms of population.
City size of population.
And,
yeah.
you put an arena down there, it'll boost the economy. It really is kind of a front porch. And it's not just the arena, it's everything else that restaurants, businesses,
builds around it.
corporations wanting to come to San Antonio. It goes far beyond just basketball.
And I know people don't understand, and I think some do, but some don't, is that we talked about the championship runs.
Yeah.
The publicity that this city gets from that is invaluable. I mean, you can't pay for that kind of publicity for a city like San Antonio, and everybody's talking about San Antonio, everybody. Mm-hmm. And so, and we're a tourist town, right? I mean, we rely on tourism, and that's so important. And so you have to have that front porch, and I think that's a great way to put it. And an NBA team does that for you.
But how much of it is depending on the success of the team? I mean, if the team's not good, you know what I mean? I mean, and how long is it going to be before we get even a 500 season out of these guys?
Well, I don't think it depends. I think there's going to be a lot of movement.
It could be around one this year. I mean, they're currently sitting 6 games back under 500 right now. The Western Conference, though, is a grind. If the Spurs are in the East, I think they probably get a couple more wins. But
there's no doubt. They'd be like in the top tier of the East. The East is horrible, by the way. And the West is tough. But look, De'Aaron Fox was a great move.
Yeah.
Great move. I love that.
Hardly gave up anything to get him.
Yep.
Right?
No,
that's the best part about it.
That was incredible.
But they've got nobody else. Stephon Castle, he's going to be a great player.
Fantastic.
So they've got their foundation. I just hope they go out in the offseason and put some other pieces around it. They still got a lot of draft capital.
Ton of it.
A lot of money. And I just hope they put a good team around.
You're saying Chris Paul's leaving, right?
Well, he's on a 1-year contract as a free agent after this season.
Signs again.
Well, and Father Time's undefeated.
Yeah.
And we're beginning to see that with Chris Paul.
And he's gonna want to play. The only reason he came here is because the Spurs are one of the few teams in the NBA to offer him a starting spot. Now with De'Aaron Fox in the mix, you would assume that Fox would assume the primary ball handler's role. And with Paul having his contract expire, maybe he goes to another team that offers. It depends what he wants to do, right? I mean, if he wants to win a championship, I don't know if here is the place to be next season. If he wants to play, I don't know if here's the place to be next season. The Spurs love what Chris Paul has done. And
Absolutely.
It's easy to see the impact he's made on a lot of these young guys. With a guy like Stephon Castle, right?
Yeah.
You look at some other guys. Yeah. Chris Paul was the mentor for Devin Booker when he came in with the Phoenix Suns. Chris Paul was the mentor for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that 1 year he spent in Oklahoma City. Gilgeous-Alexander is now arguably the best player.
He's going to be the MVP this year, most likely.
And he's on the record as crediting Chris Paul for everything he's done to take.
So Father Time's undefeated.
Yes.
What's next for Joe Ryan?
Well, he's pounding on me, but I'm still standing. Right?
You're taking the shots.
I'm taking the shots, and I'm upright. No, man, I'm loving what I'm doing right now. I get to have an opinion, and God bless the folks here at Ken, especially Jack Acosta, who allowed me to have a commentary and be able to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there I do, and I make a living now making people mad. I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of do, because you have your opinion, and I back it up, and you know, a lot of people either agree with you or disagree, but it's so much fun, and so I love going on and doing that, and with the passion Nate talked about with the Spurs, it's a Cowboy City. I mean,
Yeah,
you guys know
yeah.
that,
Oh, yeah.
and so with the mess that they're going through, it's
But
just
you're
so
a
much
Jerry
fun.
guy. You're a Jerry guy.
You guys
love Jerry
You
Jones.
both like Jerry
He
Jones.
cracks me up, yeah.
Yeah, you showed me that clip from the Landman show.
Oh.
And that was really pure Jerry Jones.
Dude, you're not watching Landman,
Right?
Come on,
I haven't watched it yet.
It's awesome.
It's good, huh?
It's awesome. Yeah.
But you're a big fan.
Big fan of Jerry Jones. He's always been good to me, and he is still one guy that has the power and the influence that loves the media. I mean, a lot of teams, Spurs are one of them, that really could care less. You know, I mean, and it's not that important to them. Jerry, it is important. He likes the camera. He likes all of that stuff. You know, we're an affiliate here. The radio station is an affiliate of the Cowboys, so we get a lot of perks, and that's all due to Jerry Jones. So, hey, I love the guy. He's not a great GM necessarily, although he's had his moments.
Yeah.
He gets a lot of blame that I don't think is necessarily warranted, but yeah, I love the guy.
One thing's for sure, win or lose, everybody's always talking about the Cowboys.
I've been to the NFC title game in 29 years, and still everybody every year talks about the Cowboys.
Oh, absolutely. They're still talking about him. Any national news program they're talking about, we're talking about. I'm sure Nate's still talking about him. It's just what you do.
How's Grandpa life? As we wrap up.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah?
It's fantastic. I love it, and it's because of all the things that you hear. You know, you get the grandkids there, and you just let them do whatever the heck they want. And then here, Mom, take them back.
Yeah.
And that to me, it's so much fun. It's almost like a parent's revenge in a way, right? If there is such a thing. But,
Exactly.
yeah, it's fantastic, man. It's great.
Are you Grandpa? Are you Pops? What are you?
Well, Grandpa mostly.
Yeah. All right.
So there's a Papa on
Papa?
one side,
Paul?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
okay.
No, Paul.
Okay.
I was watching Andy Griffith the other day. Paul! Hey, Paul! I don't want to be Paul!
I don't even know if I know who Andy Griffith is.
Oh, my God!
Who does he play for?
The Mayberry Hillbillies.
Joe Reinagel, everybody.
Joe,
man, thank you so much, bro.
Thanks
Love
for
you,
having
man.
me.
Love you, bro.
Fantastic. You guys, this is great.
So good to see you.
Wish y'all nothing but success here with this team.
These are the OGs right here, man. Absolutely.
Stuff.
Joe, you rock, man. Seriously, thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey,
Set the table for
carry
you.
the mantle, brother.
Absolutely.
I know you will.